So far, the initial reaction to the final DLC for Battlefield 1, called Apocalypse, has been fairly mediocre. The inclusion of 2 aerial maps taken from single player has members of the community upset that there isn't more chaotic ground combat, and the ground combat maps were a little bit tame in their first iteration. Huge changes, however, have been published today, and it's from your feedback on the CTE that DICE has made these changes. There's going to be some big improvements to the ground maps that are going to make them far better than they were before. So, these changes are all part of the February patch for Battlefield 1, and there is a huge amount to get through, so I'm just going to get started. But first of all, the gameplay you're watching is not from the updated patch, it is from the first test of these maps. The CTE is being updated later today with all of these new changes that I'm going to go through now, and there will be playtests tonight across the weekend as well. Textures have been enabled on the maps, so you'll be able to see them in their full glory. I've also pinned a comment down below in the comment section. It includes 4 surveys. That is DICE asking you for your feedback on the 3 maps and the February patch. So if you play the CTE tonight or across the weekend, make sure you fill out those surveys. Right then, let's get on with the change list. First of all, we're looking at the Caporetto map, and it's getting some much needed cover additions. DICE has added better lanes in between rocks and terrain for infantry to move around the map on foot. The exposed mountainside in the first test, it was, well, extremely open, making it very easy for planes to prey on soldiers and for snipers to have a long line of sight. DICE is looking to fix this. There's been a focus of more cover being added to the section of the map in between the Austro-Hungarian spawn and the capture point A. This will hopefully allow the Austro-Hungarians to advance further into the map without being in full view of the Italian army at the start of a round. And capture points B and E have had a lot of changes to their cover placement as well, and likely they will look a little bit different to how they looked before. All good changes here from DICE. One of the biggest complaints about the Caporetto map was the Austro-Hungarians being at a massive disadvantage due to the lack of cover. Hopefully, this won't be an issue anymore. DICE has also updated the roads and paths on the map to make them more obvious, meaning vehicles and infantry will find it slightly easier to move about the map without exposing themselves massively to the enemy. All capture points have had their capture zones changed a bit, and the map has received lighting updates to improve the overall gameplay experience. And lastly, more cavalry unit spawns have been added to the map. Vehicle spawn timers have been tweaked to allow the attackers, the Austro-Hungarians, to spawn theirs in first and make a start into the map and capture some flags. As this is Conquest Assault, the Italians already hold every single flag on the map. Moving on to Passchendaele now, I felt this map was the one that was in best shape during the first test, but DICE has still made some good changes here as well. They've definitely addressed the concerns the community had. First of all, DICE is adding a Livens projector to the German HQ. That's the massive gas launcher that we first saw on the Caporetto map, and that will fire onto one of the other objectives so that they can advance forwards while the British, if they're on that objective, will get covered in gas. Changes have also been made to the spawns within the German HQ, so they are less likely to get trapped by the British if the British are dominating the map. As the German HQ section is much more open than what the British section is, in the last test, it could actually be quite hard to break out of the zone if the British had pushed right up to the E flag. And to aid this further, DICE has added some emplaced machine guns around the HQ to give the Germans more firepower. DICE has added elite kit spawns to the map as well, so on different flags you will now be able to pick up the elite kits if they're there, and some changes to the combat area have been made as well. DICE has balanced the travel distances on the map between each team, and they've adjusted the out of bounds lines to better reflect the space that was actually used for gameplay. And now onto the third map, the River Somme. Now this is the map that I felt needed the most work, and I was largely critical of the map in its first design, but from this list of changes, it really does seem like DICE fully listened to the community. Now, first of all, more cover has been added around the first farmhouse, Capture Point A, in the middle of the wheat fields that the British have to move through. Terrain changes around the field should help the British advance without being mowed down by gunfire. DICE has added a Liven's projector to the British spawn that's going to land gas shells on Capture Point A, so if the British are struggling, they have some extra firepower to deaden the Germans a little bit, and a further trench has been added to the wheat fields to give the British a solid place to hold if they're seeing lots of German resistance at that first capture point. It's also worth noting they also get machine gun placements within their HQ that can fire towards the farmhouse as well. As for the rest of the map, which I also felt needed a lot more work, DICE has made some big changes here too. At least 5 new trenches have been added to the map in various locations, giving players space to hide and take cover in the open fields. GG DICE, that's exactly what we needed. The trenches that were already there on the map, they've been made larger and deeper. Craters have been added to some of the more open spaces, and terrain heights have been adjusted to give infantry more cover when they're moving from flag to flag. More soft and hard cover has been added across the map, including objects within trenches, and DICE has, in their words, beefed up the irrigation canals to make moving along them a lot more covered. These changes literally tick every single box that the community asked for, which is just incredible work from the DICE team. I can't imagine it's easy to take on so much critical feedback about one single map, but let's give them credit that they deserve here. These changes are exactly what the map needed. Some other small changes on the River Somme map. DICE has reduced the number of tanks that the British spawn with from 2 to 1, and I think that's to balance out the fact they've changed the wheat field setup so infantry can advance a little bit easier. They've added the Tank Hunter kit to the B flag, and they've added the Elite Kit comeback system to the map, so if the British fall too far behind, then Elite Kits will spawn in their HQ to give them some extra power. Now, moving on from the maps, I want to get onto another few key points that are still linked to the Apocalypse DLC here. Firstly, the new RSC SMG, that's the new assault weapon, is getting some big buffs in this patch. The maximum damage is being increased to 38, and a minimum damage is increased to 21, so if you get a headshot in close quarters, this thing is now a 2-shot kill. That's extremely powerful. The vertical recoil is also being reduced to make it easier to control. A new firing animation is being implemented so your sights are less disrupted, and the front sight has been tapered a little bit more so you can keep your eyes on your target. The Howl rifle, that's the new medic weapon, is also seeing some changes. DICE is adding a bipod to the factory variant, and that should make prone fire a little bit more easier to control. The sights have also been changed so you can keep your eyes on the target, and a new firing animation is in place again so you can see your target more clearly when you are actually firing at them. And lastly, the LMG 0818, that's the new support weapon, is getting some changes. DICE has slightly increased its vertical recoil value. They've tweaked the sight alignment to again improve the firing animation so that you can keep your sights on target. Now, beyond these changes, there are many more that DICE is adding in the February patch, but if I were to list them all, I would literally be here all day. Some of them are quite in-depth, so I'm just going to pick out 4 highlights here I was reading through, and these ones interested me. First of all, the cavalry class can now heal themselves and their horse by simply dropping a medic pouch without having to dismount, and DICE has buffed the cavalry to make them more resistant to damage while they're mounted on their horse. DICE has removed the ability for you to slide directly backwards or sideways. This means you're now more limited in terms of movement, and enemies should have an easier time predicting where you might slide to, and a minimum sprint speed has been implemented before the slide will activate as well, so you should see even less players crouch sliding their way to victory across the field. And finally, the Ribeyrolles carbine that I said was the most versatile SMG earlier in the week is getting a small nerf. It's getting a slight increase to its horizontal recoil, but it's getting a reduction in its first shot spread multiplier. Now this, according to DICE, should incentivize burst fire at medium range and simply remove the pressure for you to mag dump all those bullets on the enemy. Now that is a huge amount of changes, and there are even more in the patch notes. I will link those down in the description for you. As I said, there are playtests happening tonight on the CTE for the 3 ground maps coming in the Apocalypse DLC, and all the changes I've listed from the February patch will be in there for you to test. So if you do play tonight, please fill out the surveys that I've linked in the pinned comment in the comments section. Your feedback really does help the DICE team, as you can see from what they've done in this patch. They really did listen to the community and made some big fundamental changes. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure you leave your thoughts down below in the comments section. And until next time, my name is Westie, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.